dialed in to Byron Velvick's Fish Tales. Real talk, real tactics, and the stories that make it all worthwhile. Here's Byron.
Oh my gosh. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fish Tales. I'm going to tell you right now, first off, I want to welcome everybody to this week's show. I hope everybody is staying warm, safe. Man, what a challenging cold front we have coming through. We're here in San Antonio, Texas, north of San Antonio. Ice storm. My guest here coming up, Kent Brown. He's been so patient with me. I told him that, I'm out there wrapping up the well pump and putting water in the bathtub. Rick Klein told me to put water in the bathtub and so much stuff going on. And I just hope everybody's safe. Everybody's warm. Everybody watching the show has gotten through it. You're obviously seeing this on Monday. We're shooting this thing tonight, and it's the worst of the nights, Saturday night. So my prayers, wishes out to all of you. Want to say something real quick. Livingston Lures has a great program, and we want to thank you, every one of you that subscribe, like, and comment. Every one of you in the audience that actually loves the show, subscribes, likes, comments. We appreciate you. One in particular thing that we do every single week is we give away a $100 pro pack with Livingston. Mercury, Camus, Trica, they're all great sponsors. Livingston does a special deal, $100 pro pack. And, we go through all the comments, all the likes, and the subscribers. This week's winner is Dustin Grant, 2026 or 2062. I have my glasses on, so I can't see it, but I want to thank you, Dustin Grant, for subscribing, liking, commenting, and everybody else, please give it a try. Please subscribe. And this is really cool because this guy has been so patient. I told you who it is, dear friend of mine, and we have had technical difficulties. We've had the engineer coming in to help. We've tried this a couple times now. What do you think, Ken? Are we going to be able to pull this off tonight or not? Are we going to make this show work?
Do you remember that time at Clear Lake, Byron, when we had the whole bow of your boat torn apart, trying to get you back on the water the next morning, and we had all the tools? I think you had a pair of pliers and maybe a screwdriver that didn't fit the screws in the bow of your boat. But you remember that? Kind of where we were. We started this whole thing, man.
I do remember the screws in the boat.
Yeah, you were never the most mechanically inclined guy when you were on tour.
That's a fact. That's a fact. I was always the guy asking for all of you guys to help me, and if it wasn't for the service crews on the Elite Tour, man, I was dead in the water, very much so.
Yeah, exactly, buddy. It's great to be here. I don't know where I fit in when you have Gary Klein and you had the Hall of Fame guys on, and now you're throwing me on. I don't know how that works.
So it's funny because I called you and I said, "Hey Kent, we just finished Danny Brower. Rick Klein's coming up next. Trying to get Hank Parker to come on. I've juggled him a couple times and I feel bad because I've been like, Hank, we got to do this show. And then I got to do it around the schedule that we both have. And then I'm like, Kent, we're doing the show. And he's like, whoa, Kent, you're like, wait a minute. Hank Parker, Danny Brower, Rick Klein, and Kent Brown. It sounds like the perfect lineup.
Yeah, no, it's not the perfect lineup, but I am very appreciative to get to hang out with my old buddy Byron and just do your show instead of you doing my show.
And that about that show, I mean, you've been doing this, you and I go way, way back, 30, 40 years, but you've been doing this radio show thing for quite some time. Tell me about it.
21 years, Byron. We've been doing the Ultimate Bass radio show, and we're not a podcast, man. We're an actual radio show, 50,000 watt AM talk station, Northern California. They carry the Sacramento Kings, which is not always the best thing going on for us, but the Kings, the 49ers, the A's, we have a great sports talk station, and we go on every Saturday morning at 5 a.m. drive time when everybody's going fishing, and it's been fun. We do a podcast. You can catch it on iTunes. You can catch it on the Apple Podcast app there, and honestly, there's about 40 different podcasting platforms that I don't know anything about, but they carry the show. And, so I do talk to people that, they get it on DAR FM, or they get it here, they get it there. So it's cool. There's a lot of different platforms. But when we started the show, Byron, to do a podcast, I had to record it on a physical CD, mail the CD to Tony Stoltz. He had to download it, and then he'd put it up on westernbass.com. And that was literally the first podcasted fishing show in the West, for sure. Anywhere, so I mean, that's how we podcasted, was a physical CD download to the website.
That's crazy. Like, you're one of the OGs. So you were like, you were cutting edge on social media and fishing, weren't you, Kent? You really were.
for a lot of that stuff, we were, I mean, they said that you couldn't do just a one topic, one species show, Oh no, you have to do saltwater and tuna and trout and kokanee and, salmon and all the, and we said, no, man, we're going to come in and we're going to do a bass fishing show. We're going to cover all my friends. I got this great Rolodex with everyone's phone number in it. And we're going to go live and it's been fun. We have very little editing, and we've had very few times that we've had to hit the button for the 7 words that George Carlin said you couldn't say on radio or television. Ironically, one of the times we had to do that was Byron Velvick, if you remember correctly. Do you remember the story?
Guilty.
Yeah.
Guilty.
Yeah.
I'm holding my hand up, Ken. Here we go. It didn't take long. Go ahead.
You called from a fog delay at an Elite Series tournament. And I'm like, man, Byron Velvick's on the line. Okay, great, man. We'll go to him. And what's Byron doing? Hey, man, we're in the middle of a fog delay. We're hanging out. It's me, it's Skeet, it's Bird Dog. And as soon as KVD gets out of the shit house, we'll have him too. On the air. And we had to go to the 10-second delay. And this was after you had done, Bass Center, The Bachelor, all of the TV stuff, all the stuff you did for, MLF. And you were one of the few guys that we actually had to hit the drop button on and utilize our 10-second delay.
Because I was talking to my homeboy, Kent Brown, my buddy for 40 years. I mean, I'm just like, hey, as soon as he gets out of the shit house, we'll be right with you. And you're like, whoa. And I'm like, well, that's right, Kent. We're not just talking on a cell phone. We're talking we're doing a radio show. I'm like, I just thought I was talking to my buddy, Kent. That's what I thought I was doing.
It was great. And one of the classics. It was actually one of the classic dump button experiences we've had in our 21 years of the show.
Oh my gosh, I totally remember that. Hey, 40 years together. We were talking about this. We tried doing the show before, and we talked about how we met, and you reminded me, it's cool that we're doing the show again, but you remembered us actually meeting, and go ahead, I'll let you tell that story.
Del Mar, San Diego, the Fred Hall show. I was, speaking on the whole circuit out here, doing all the different sports shows. And you came up to me in Del Mar and you were just like, hi, I'm Byron. And, man, I'm going to come up north. I'm going to fish tournaments. I'm going to be there. And that was the very first time I met you. And I think you were probably still in college and maybe just out.
Yeah.
We were super young, man. I mean, I met Murray doing the same thing. We were 21 and I was in Phoenix, Arizona doing seminars over there. And they said, have you met John Murray, man? He's 21 too. Guy's amazing. Catches all these fish. And I'm like, no, I haven't met him, So we meet up in the middle of the hall over by the demo tank, and that's where I met Murray, which is kind of a cool deal, getting an opportunity to do all the sports shows and seminars. Man, I just wrapped up my 38th consecutive year doing the International Sportsman's Expo in Sacramento last weekend. So I can, I'm never going to say.
How is that possible? 30?
I know. I'm never going to say I can catch more fish than you, Byron, or all of my friends. But what I will tell you is I promise you that I have done more demo tank seminars than any angler in the West. Guaranteed all of I don't care who you throw in. I've been on a demo tank and done more seminars and spent more time trying to teach people how to fish than anybody.
Dude, 38 consecutive years. That means you never once got sick. You never had anything else. You made that show every single year for 38 years straight. That is I've been to that show a handful of times for sponsors with you. We've been around together, but you're like a pillar of that thing. You're a staple at that show. And how the heck have you never missed one? Like, have you gone there dog sick some years and you limped through it?
Oh yeah. Oh no, I've been dog sick a few times or dog sick and left there, once it was all over with, but just always made that show a priority. It's my hometown show. Now, obviously, with the radio show, that's where a lot of our hometown fans are at, folks we get to hang out with and see once a year, and it's just always been a priority. And now I don't do a lot of seminars there now, Byron. I do one day. I get on the tank once because we have so many great anglers. And I got to hang out with Skeet. He was there all 4 days, so that was fun. And I don't know, they put the Ranger booth, where I'm supposed to work. and Skeet's booth across the aisle from each other. So that's never good. You know that. We're gonna get in trouble with Kenny then.
Oh no.
Yeah, yeah,
No, not good at all.
yeah. So then Skeet's girls are there hanging out with us. So that was kind of a complete turnaround. Because you remember Skeet met Kim when she was working actually in my radio partner's booth in San Mateo. He met Kim in Seth Hendrickson's booth. And I walked by and put my arm around him
I
and I
didn't
said,
know that. I
"Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah." He met Kimmy in the
wait,
booth,
wait, time out. Tell me this again. Skeet met Kimmy where?
San Mateo at the ISE show.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
I did not know
at,
that.
at the ISE show, and it was pretty wild. Kim was actually working the booth. She loved to fish, and her dad, Tom Costner, played Santana. They were both in the booth, and my partner, he sells trout fishing lures. Right now, he made his living selling trout lures. And Skeet would not leave his booth, ironically. And finally, he had to say, "Kim, this is Skeet. Skeet, this is Kim. Skeet, get out of my booth." So had to throw him out of the booth. But it was kind of fun. Now he's there. Now he's got his girls there working his booth, and he's trying to keep all the young bass fishermen out of his booth. It's just it's a big
Yeah.
turnaround for all of us. Yeah, yeah.
I can relate to the same thing because I got, spring break this year is on top of the Bassmaster Classic. So my
Yeah.
daughter and I are going to the Bassmaster Classic for spring break together to work the Livingston booth. So we'll be there at Livingston. Bastrix is going to be there hanging out. But my daughter's working the booth. And like you said, all those little high school guys all around the country, Byron Velvick's daughter now, she's got her own little following and people are hitting her up on all of her little social media. She's a high school girl, but she loves to fish and she's going to be working the booth. It's cool, right?
That's awesome. And one good thing is we'll bring in a big sister for her, Byron, because my daughter's going to actually come down from Nashville and hang out for a day with me at Knoxville too. So it'll be fun. Yeah, we'll get to hang out.
No way! So Kristen's
Yeah.
going to be there?
Yeah,
Kristen will be at the Bassmaster Classic?
she'll be at the Classic one day. Yeah, she's going to come down and see everybody. So it'll be fun.
You got to have her sing the national anthem on the final day.
Well, we talked to Bass about it, but they kind of fumbled around on it. I don't know what they're going to do with it yet, but yeah. So she's going to come
Kidding
down.
me? They missed the opportunity.
They may have at this point. Yeah, they we talked to a few folks and they were like, "Oh yeah, I think the city does this." And I mean, it's kind of funny, and your listeners may or may not know. I mean, she was on The Voice. She did all that stuff. Lives in Nashville now, and is a Nashville recording and writer, recording artist, and does all that fun stuff there. But I think anytime you go, "Hey, my daughter could do the anthem at the Bassmaster Classic or wherever." I mean, I don't know. She's done Monday Night Football. I think the Bassmaster Classic would be okay. And it's kind of funny because they always kind of go, "Oh yeah, I don't know." I mean, they think it's like somebody's trying to get their kid on a talent show. It's really ironic, but it is what it is.
The coolest thing about watching The Voice was seeing you on The Voice with tears in your eyes, crying. Oh my gosh, Kent! I've known you forever, and to see you, both of you out there and crying as she's singing, I'm like, it was so cool to see the two of you on the show.
Yeah, man. I mean, when the chairs finally turned and we knew she was going to be on the show, when Gwen Stefani and
Right.
Reba actually turned and we knew she was going to be on the show, it was awesome. And she says that half of her fan base is holding a fish. So that part's kind of cool.
I wish I could get the rights right now, I know I can't, but I watched it. I encourage anybody watching this show to go back and check out the show that she was on. Because Kent, again, he, just like I did on The Bachelor, you brought bass fishing to The Voice. You and your daughter brought bass fishing to the show. And
we were
so,
on the
so many
water
more
and all
people
kinds of
saw
cool
bass
stuff.
fishing and you.
Yeah, we were on the water and did some stuff in the boat and went fishing. Yeah, it was great. It was a great aspect of the whole deal, and she definitely gained a lot of fishing friends. And it's pretty funny because like one of the first calls we got when the show aired, obviously with the different time zones, one of the first text messages we got were for Kevin and Sherry Van Dam. So it was pretty cool. Sean, Paulie Gravesby, just all of our friends across the country. It was awesome.
That is so cool, kid. That's like you got to experience. It's like when I did The Bachelor, and all of a sudden I got Jimmy Houston and Hank Parker, and all those guys are like, "Man, you've turned us into a knitting circle. We're all watching every Wednesday to see who you give a rose to and who you don't give a rose to." And it was like, and I was at a promotional thing with Irwin Jacobs for Walmart, and I remember it was Jimmy Houston, Hank Parker, Guy Ecker was there, and they were like, "Yeah," they go, "All of us are watching the show every Wednesday now. They're all hooked on The Bachelor just because they want to see why their friend is or isn't giving roses out." And I'm like, I can't believe I got everybody like you did on the show. We're all watching the Voice to see how she does, knowing that you guys are part of the show and she's in it. And oh, that was really touching, Kent. That was really cool.
Yeah, it was fun. I remember being at Lake Shasta at a pairing for I was a Bassmaster tournament, and Skeet and I were telling the tournament director, like, "Hey, hurry up, we have to go watch The Bachelor." So it was kind of that part was kind of fun.
Hey, I am so worried. I know we got this garbled connection, and
Yeah,
also I don't know when we're going to lose power because they're saying this. And you've watched the show before, and I'm going to do this early. Normally, you do this at the end of the show, but we're going to do this, and we're going to keep talking afterwards. But you know the segment, the one that got away, right?
the one that got away.
You've
I
seen
do
the
know the
segment, the
segment.
one that got
I
away.
do. I do.
And we show Jim Bitter. We show Jim Bitter fumbling the fish that
Off the
ended up
console.
costing him the Bassmaster Classic, which is about to play right now while Tim Tucker's taking the picture. By the way, I got to tell you a story, Ken. Ken Duke tells me that Jim Bitter caught that fish and he was going back to put it in the well. And Tim Tucker was in the back in that shot. You see him. He says, "You sure that one's a keeper?" And it stopped Jim Bitter from putting it in the well. And he went to measure it right there on the side of the boat, right next to the gunnel. And it jumped out and he did not come in with 5 fish that day. So the segment we're about to show, the backstory is that Tim Tucker said his Bitter's wife never, ever talk to Tucker again. Because do you know the backstory of what was going to happen if Bitter won the Bassmaster Classic?
No. Yeah.
If Bitter won the Bassmaster Classic, he was going to buy his wife a set of boobs.
So it's Tim Tucker's fault.
I'm not joking. And Tim Tucker told him to measure it. And so Jim Bitter's wife blamed Tucker for not getting her boobs. And this is a Fishtails exclusive. That
Oh my God.
Bitter's wife was going to get herself breast augmentation by winning the Bassmaster Classic. So that fish you see jumping off that we're about to show, that was not just the one that got away. That was the boobs. It was the boobs that got away. We're going to call it the boobs that got away. Because there goes. But I lined it up now. Now roll Jim Bitter. Here we go. Roll the Jim Bitter clip and watch the boobs that got away.
The memory still haunts him. He lost by 2 ounces.
And Kent Brown, now the question to you. It doesn't have to be a fish. It can be a contract, a sponsor, anything in your life. What is the one that got away for Kent Brown?
I think probably the one. I get one, right? Just one.
No, you can do 2 because Rick Clunn did 2. So if anybody hasn't seen the Rick Clunn early version, he had 2 that got away, and they're both amazing.
The one I think that probably got away, that I felt like got away, Byron, was early on. Major League Fishing was getting started. They were putting everything together, and I went through about 4 interview processes to be one of the on-air guys. And then actually our friend Marty Stone decided that he was going to go, he was one of the original investors. He was going to go on the air instead of actually fishing the event. And so they went, "Oh man, sorry, that was going to be the spot we were going to let you do, but Marty Stone's going to do it." And Marty did a great job. Yeah, Marty did a great job.
You were going to be the on the water guy? You were going to do the Marty Stone on the water for all the early Major League Fishings?
That was where we were headed with it. Yeah, I met in the secret hotel rooms at the ICAST show in Las Vegas with everybody who was everybody at Major League Fishing, and went through the processes and watched tapes and had to narrate and do all the stuff. And so, yeah, I think that was, that one was kind of a big one that got away. I think that was one that got away. And I'll tell you this, the other fishing one that got away, Byron, was the Bassmaster Clear Lake Open that Mark Tyler won. If you remember correctly, the first day of the tournament, I weighed 3 for like 14 pounds. I was in 100 and something place, and I was loading my truck, and you and Ski and Greg Gutierrez were calling me. What I was a debit at the money house. I was a debit at the money house because I was loading my truck. So we were launching the other side of the lake, and I wasn't going to drive back around and load my stuff up to go home. Right? I'm thinking, man, I would say I was like 116th place. Day two, I
Right.
figured him out. Day two, I figured him out. Made the cut. Then I had to go back to the house and unload all my stuff while you guys were razzing me about that. Never load your stuff up, man. Never load your stuff. We told you were going to catch him. I caught him big the second day. I caught him big the third day. And I wound up finishing like 10th. And my co-angler the third day came
Oh,
out of 25th and won the co-angler side. Remember Bob Higgins up at Clear Lake at the tackle store? That was when Bob won the boat. He did that with me. And that one, if I would have just, and I went back and fished the same water I fished the first day on day 2 and 3. I just figured out what they were doing and how to catch them. And I stayed in one area for 2 days and wound up making a top 10 or 12. I mean, it was right there. And Mark Tyler won the tournament. And that one was definitely one that got away.
I read all the comments, and if I don't ask you this question, there's going to be a whole bunch of people on Fishtails comments that are going to say, what did he do differently? What you said you were on the same fish all 3 days, and you figured out how to catch them on the second and third day. Kent, you got to tell everybody watching what changed. What did you do differently? Because this is this super scoop inside secrets.
I was in a canal, which I like to do up there. I like to sneak around the canals up there, especially
Yep.
when nobody else is doing it. The first day I beat the bank in the canal, and I realized that they were behind me, and they were in the middle of the canal, and they were out in the middle of the bay, and they weren't relating to anything. They were just running bait out in the middle of the canal. And I'm sure if we'd had forward facing sonar then, I would have figured it out much sooner. But we didn't, and I finally figured them out and was catching them on an LV500, catch them on a spinnerbait, catching them on a speed trap, and that's how we caught them. So yeah, a bunch of old school baits, but that's what I did, man. I just quit beating the bank.
You're fine. I can hear you. Can you hear me and see me? No, don't, because I think
Connect
I
the
can see it.
studio. Okay.
Hey, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty, so we took a break. Last night was Saturday night. We're shooting the rest of this today, Sunday. You guys will be watching it tomorrow. And right off the bat, I want to say a heartfelt concern, and I hope everybody involved with this storm, this ice storm Fern that's affecting so many people out there. Louisiana, New Mexico, Washington, Alabama, Texas, Tennessee, everywhere. It's just a massive storm. I hope you're safe. I hope you're warm. I appreciate you tuning in if you are locked up, cabin fever. But most importantly, I just hope all of our viewers and everybody checking out this podcast is doing well. And what happened was we were just having all kinds of technical difficulties. Kent has been such a trooper. We have gone through 3 or 4 different incarnations of this show. We've tried different things with microphones and cameras and Wi-Fi, and he's moved over to his mom's house and checked her Wi-Fi, and I'm bringing you back in, Kent. But the cool thing is, Kent, are you there? Can you hear me?
I think we're finally going to be able to pull it off. And hey, what better chance?
Go ahead.
What better chance? What better chance? Hey, I can show off my sponsor truck too, right? I mean, that's a good way to do it, right? From the cab of the Tundra.
From the cab of the Tundra with the Ranger thing on, got Camus,
Yeah, right.
Livingston. We're representing.
Yeah.
We're
all good.
Fishtails pinball
dude.
machine. There's the old pinball machine from the Money House.
I remember that pinball machine. I played that, but I never beat Spin.
Aaron's, we talked about this, Aaron's high score, and I wish I would have had the batteries in there to keep Aaron's high score. Everybody talks about Aaron and me fighting all that stuff. That was a day on the lake at Falcon. That was ridiculous. But Aaron's high score, we were friends before and after all that, and he loved having the high score on that thing. And if anybody beat him, if Skeet or I or anybody, Robert Lee played it, if anybody beat that score of his, boy, he would come right back in and get angry and spend the whole afternoon claiming it back, if you know what I mean. That's typical Aaron.
Drive across the country to play the pinball machine to get the high score back. was Aaron.
Exactly. Hey, listen, I have a unique situation here. I got to edit the first part of this show. So we are 22 minutes into this show and I get to see everything we've done so far. So never before I've edited a show when we're in the show. So I got to bring up the first thing. If anybody wants to check out your daughter's performance on The Voice, how would you find it online? What do they do to see you, your wife, and your daughter on The Voice?
Yeah, they can, they can go to Kristen Brown Music. That's her webpage. Or they can just search Kristen Brown Music on YouTube, Byron, and I think all that stuff's still out there. All of her, voice performances and her audition, all the cool stuff from The Voice is there. So
Kristen Brown. I'll go ahead and put it down here as far as right here. I'll have all the correct way to spell Kristen and all that stuff. So right here, we'll spell it all out and have everything, and you can give me all the links afterwards. The other thing I'm going to call you out on is I'm watching the show and I don't remember calling you a debt at the Clear Lake Money House, and I got to tell the viewers and those of you that are watching,
a debit. Yeah, it was a debit.
A debit at the Money House. So we had two money houses when we fished the tour. We had the Money House at Lake Mead that John Murray and I owned, and I ended up buying it from John. That was right there at Lake Mead, the U.S. Open house. I bought it the second time I won the U.S. Open. I bought that house with that money. And then we had John Broussard's Money House at Clear Lake, which you were considered, or I guess you said you, me, and Skeet and Gutierrez were all staying there, and we called you a debit because you were doing so well on that on the first day of that tournament.
Yeah, I sucked on the first day, and the one that got away obviously was I think in my art probably really close to a Bassmaster win, or at least possibly getting a Bassmaster win on Clear Lake, and not taking anything away from Mark Tyler, who won that tournament. He crushed him. He did a great job, and I remember Tyler put his arm around me when it was over, and he said, "I'm glad it's not one more day, buddy." And it was it was one of those tournaments, and just kind of figured them out. But yeah, you guys all called me a debit. It was I
had no idea. I had no idea that we called you a debit for one thing, and I had no idea.
You guys were like, there's deposits and there's debits. Deposits, debits, and I'm sure our friend in the big yellow truck had something to do with it at that point in time. But,
do you think that sounds like a Skeet Reesism? Is that what you're saying? Is that a Skeetism?
It could be. It could be. And another thing that came up, Byron, at the Money House when when one of us would have a bad tournament, Greg Gutierrez and I if you had a bad tournament, it was just Crown Royal and Rocky Road. That was the only thing that was going to fix it, right?
Right.
You heard that, right?
I know.
Well, this past weekend after day one at Lake Shasta, I sent 2 pictures to Greg Gutierrez: a bottle of Crown Royal and a scoop of Rocky Road.
That's it.
He didn't have a good day. He didn't have a good day. So yeah, he appreciated it. But man, when we we're still good. I just had the phone jump off where it was.
This show, guys, is cursed. I mean, we're talking about technical difficulties.
We're not even going to edit that out.
We're not. We can't edit that, Kent. We got to leave it in.
We're leaving it.
Listen,
Byron, I mean, when we think about the era of bass fishing that we grew up in, I don't think there'll ever be a better era, and especially the West. When you think about the era of the West Coast, I mean, obviously, the history rich West Coast, the D. Thomases, the Dave Glebe's, the Gary Kleins, the Bobby Garlands, those guys, obviously paved a lot of the ways. They were amazing anglers. But then the era of, Skeet, Aaron, John Murray, I mean, we grew up with Brett Hite, the Dave
Mike Reynolds, Russ Meyer. We can go on and on, but
I mean, if you guys have your big Bass League cards out, you can check them off on the West Coast, man. I mean, it was just, we grew up in that whole era, fishing Lake Shasta or Lake Oroville or the Delta or Clear Lake or Mead or Havasu and places like that. But man, we were so lucky to grow up in that era. And I love guys were like, well, how many boats did you win? Well, I grew up with John Murray and Gary Dobbins and Byron and Skeet. John and Dobbins together had 77, I think, was what the total count was. We finally figured out.
Right.
Fully rigged boats. You know.
Yeah.
And we had an opportunity, as you remember, we could fish for a boat a couple times a month.
Dude,
10
you
months
would,
out of the year.
Kent, you would be boat rich and money poor. I mean, there was one
Yeah.
point I had 3 boats one year. In one year, I had 3 boats, and I
Yeah.
had no money, and I'm trying to sell boats because we had boats, and then we won that truck. Murray and I won a truck, and it's like you win all these different things, and you're like, oh my gosh, you got all
Yeah.
these things, but you don't have money, so you're selling the boats cheap to the dealers, and you have certificates or the actual physical boat, like when you win some of the West Coast bass tournaments, and you got to figure out how to get it home, and it was a crazy time. Yeah, the boat count was insane.
Until Skeet and some of the guys went back, Aaron, until, that mid 90s West Coast contingent went to the Bassmaster Classic, the Bassmaster, events, whether it was a 150 or what have you. Um, we started getting a little more recognition in the West. We started to get a little more sponsor love. We started to get a little, hey, it's viable out there.
Right.
Instead of, you mean there's not a wall built at Texas where the
Right.
money stops, but
Oh,
so it was cool.
you can
It was very cool.
you can make a good living fishing the West. It was hard for me to leave the West because I think I was 3rd on that all-time money winner list for one bass when they finally put together an all-time money winner list for a while there, just from the
Yeah.
U.S. Opens and everything else. And you're like thinking, how do I leave the West when I can make a really good living just staying up and down, Washington, California, Nevada, Arizona, and Ken, as well as I do, that it was a very lucrative time just to be a West Coast fisherman. You knew you were going to spend a heck of a lot more money, fish with a lot higher caliber of guys, and start donating to the D. Thomas, to the Denny Brower, Rick Klein, Kevin Van Dam, Tommy Biffle, everybody else fund when you went back east.
Yeah. I had a great conversation with Brian, the carpenter, who does everything with
Yeah.
Ike and does the show with Ken Duke now. And I told Brian, I said, watching what you guys did in New Jersey and in that area as they were growing up, all fishing together, all traveling together, sleeping in parking lots. I was like, we didn't know you guys, but we were doing the exact thing in the West Coast.
Right.
We were all out there sleeping at Fifth Street at Clear Lake, and bumming power and trying to charge your batteries any way you could. It was, man, it was such a really cool time to grow up in the sport. And I hope these young anglers that are out there today, whether they're college, whether they're rookies on the elites or rookies on the opens, I hope those guys are forming the relationships and the friendships that we formed.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I hope that they're all forming the relationships, the lifelong friendships that we all formed.
That's a good point,
Yeah.
Ken. You're right.
Yeah.
And we all had lifelong friendships that transcended all the way to now. And so we've known each other, like we said at the beginning of the show, 40 years.
40 years.
And what's really cool here is that when I look at all the comments, I love reading the comments for Fishtails. There's a ton of West Coast guys watching this show because Fishtails, coming from my background and the money pinball machine and all the guests like you and Gary Klein and and Bobby Barrick, it's like, man, you're giving some love to the west side, Ish Monroe, west side.
Yeah,
But throwing love out. And I love it. It's a worldwide. You know what I always forget, Ken, is I go to the comments and then I see comments from Australia, South Africa, Japan. And I'm like, we're sitting here just chatting about California and the Money House, and talking about this horrible ice storm, which a lot of people in the United States are affected by. But I know it's like 60 degrees out where you're at, and people around the world. I mean, it's just amazing what these podcasts have become, and it just brings. It's like Ken Duke said, fishing is the great unifier. This is something that brings us all together around the world, around this country, and we share these stories. It's not clickbait, it's not drama. I'm not here to bash anybody. I'm not here to be controversial.
God, no.
We're just here to have fun, like your radio show. Dude, I love your radio show.
Yeah, I just refuse. I got an hour a week to talk about something positive in bass fishing.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
I don't need to bash anyone. I don't need to bash a tournament organization or a director or an angler who may have made a mistake on the water and got a rules violation. Man, you know what? Our sport is so much bigger than that, and it's unfortunate that it's a limited number of guys who are riding those horses. And they're a very small posse, but they're a powerful posse.
But
Unfortunately,
I think there's a paradigm shift, Kent. I think people are so fed
I
up with
see
the
it.
clickbait because I'm
I
reading
see it
comments
too.
and so many people in the comments are saying, "Hey, we're glad to see Fishtails is really cool, telling great stories. Not people just stuck with forward-facing sonar and a little computer screen, but we're talking about life on tour. We're talking about the memories we have. We're going to bring young guys on the show too, just like you do. We're going to share it all. But I think there is, and you see it. You said you see it too. It's that paradigm shift where people are tired of the clickbait garbage sensationalism. I don't want to
Yeah,
be a sensationalist on fishing. I mean, it's like how many guys can go out there and be controversial to the point where the extreme controversial has been done. Reel it back in and let's have a good time, share stories, and have an hour together and hope everybody enjoys just kind of reminiscing on like Gary Klein. I mean, we missed it. That leads me into this, Kent. We
oh
missed
yeah,
your
no,
story of Gary Klein because we did it in the first episode that got thrown in the trash. But
right,
you
yeah.
you watched the Gary Klein segment of our show, and then you said, "Dude, here's a picture of that." I'm not even. Now you get to tell
Well,
it. Tell the Gary Klein story.
well, Gary Klein is my adopted big brother. Okay, I mean he really is, and it was an interesting story because the guy that I grew up around here went to school with his son. He made all the molds. He made all the aluminum molds for every lure company, Mans and Garland and everybody in his garage. And when I was in high school, ate up with bass fishing. 15 years old, couldn't even drive yet. He made the molds for Gary Klein. And Gary Klein was not that much older than I am. He is older than I am. I do point that out, but he wasn't that much older than I was. But man, coming from California, he was my hero. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I got to meet Gary. I got to go fishing with Gary a couple of times. I practiced with Gary for the U.S. Bass tournament that he won at Clear Lake before he went back and competed in the classic that year, and it was just super cool. But we poured the weapon jig. Remember the old tournament lures, weapon jig, the Margar jig, all those jigs that Gary made. I poured them, I painted them, my buddy tied them, and we packaged them. Hung like, I don't know, probably 24 of them on a card. Card probably weighed 5 pounds. And Gary would sell them out of the back of his van like Murray used to Ricos, on the road.
Right.
And yeah, but we would pour them in a single cavity mold, Byron, and pour it, and trim the weed guard, and no one can figure out how we could pour the weed guard in the jig. We weren't gluing them in or putting them in after. We were actually pouring them in the mold. Well, what they didn't know is after we cut the weed guard off, we were flipping them into a coffee can of water, and that's what would cool the jig head and not melt the weed guard off. And so for a
Ah.
long time, they couldn't figure that out.
Right.
And at that point in time, Gary was the first one to put a round bend hook in a jig. He was the first one to put a needle point hook in a jig. He was the first one to kind of turn the eye, and it was all from his rookie season in bass when he started counting the fish he lost because of his equipment, because of what he had. He was counting the fish he lost, and he only lost the Angler of the Year title by 2 pounds
Wow.
to Roland Martin that time. So I mean, it was pretty interesting when we came up, and I got to be part of the tournament lures deal. But so Gary was talking about that Skeeter boat that he had at Lake Powell, that he blew the motor up on the
On
last
our
day.
show, yes. If
On your show.
anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, go back to the Gary Klein episode of Fishtails, and he was talking all about the motor blowing up on the
Yeah.
Lake Powell tournament, that boat. And you wrote me right afterwards. You texted me immediately once it aired.
Yeah. Skeeter Wrangler. It was a Skeeter Wrangler, and then Gary took the motor off that he blew up, and he put like a 135 on it, and he was competing with a 135 when there was a 150 limit. Remember,
Right.
and it was Byron in my in 40 some years of tournament fishing, 40 plus years. It was the only boat I ever owned that didn't have a Mercury outboard on it. To this day, and I think it was just such a bad experience. I just couldn't ever run anything but a Mercury after that. And the second boat I bought from Gary and Rich Forehand was a 350B Ranger with a Mercury 150 on it. The very first fish I caught in that boat was the 12-pound, 13-ounce West Coast bass record at
Wow.
Clear Lake. Very first
No.
fish.
Really?
Yeah, black
That
and red Black and red Pope lug.
That's a way to christen a boat by catching over a 12 as your first fish in a boat. You always wonder what your first fish is going to be when you get your new boat, right?
Yeah, and if it didn't just completely spin me out by how big it was, I probably would have won that tournament, but I didn't. I finished third.
Oh.
But yeah, craziness. But yeah, I mean, it was October 1983. I caught that fish, and it held as a West Coast bass record for a long time, and largest fish weighed in the tournament in the West Coast.
You said something there about Mercury, and I remember when we first did the first round of the podcast, which is never going to be seen because we had the technical difficulties. I was with Mercury from John Murray introduced me to Dan Shad back in the day during the early iCast days, and I was with Mercury for quite a while, and then all of a sudden Dan hired this public relations guy who got in the middle of me and Dan, and so for just like you said, for 1 year I went to try to get my motor from my boat, and this guy says, "Well, send us a resume," and I'm like, "Wait a minute, I've been talking to Dan and I just need to get my motor." He's like, I'm reevaluating the whole pro staff. And I'm like, oh no. At the time I was doing really well in the Redman regionals and the Redmans and the one basses and all the little tournaments. So like you said, Ken, I got Evan Johnson was knocking on my door. They said, we'll take you, Evan Johnson. And it was the FICT. You remember the FIC, the FICT. And everybody said, fix my FICT. Like that was the battle cry for Evan Johnson
it's broke, fix it.
Broke.
I remember that.
Fix my FICT. Well, I blew 3 of them in 1 year. I was with them for 1 year and I blew 3 Evan Rude Johnson full-blown powerheads. And the saddest story was the last one, Kent. It was the Redman Regional. You remember the Redman Regional when they used to give away a boat and a truck fully loaded for first place?
Yeah.
Like the Dream Rig, they called it.
And you went to the All-American.
All-American and automatically you're going to the All-American. Mike Whitaker was running Redman back then, and he had a fully rig matching Chevy S10 truck and a brand new boat. It might have been a Ranger. I think it was a Ranger, but I had my Mercury. I'm leading the tournament the first day at Lake Mead because the Redman Regionals at Lake Mead. Second day, I have the winning weight in my bag, the winning weight in my live well, and it's a lower basin. And I go, oh, I'm going to stop over here. Maybe I'll stop and fish here a little bit, but I'm pretty sure I got enough to win the tournament. So Kent, I stop in a pocket across the lake from the marina, and I fish for a little bit. And the guy goes, "Man, you got a big bag, and you probably got this thing won. You should go in. You should probably take it to the ramp." I fire up. I'm starting to get my hole shot. And I hear a pop, and I go, oh my gosh. And you know me, mechanically, we talked about this at the beginning of the show. I know nothing.
You're not mechanical. Yeah.
I took the cowling off, Ken, and I look and there's a hole in the side of it. I see smoke coming out. And I go, and I got duct tape and I got a rag, and I go, what can we put over that hole so that I can cover that hole up so we can make it in? And the guy's like, son, you got a hole in your block. And I go,
you know nothing about compression at that time.
I didn't know about compression. I knew there was a hole in my motor. I knew I needed to take a piece of cardboard or part of my tackle box and then tape it over with duct tape, and we're going to be fine. And he goes, you're not going anywhere. That motor's done. And I go, no, we got to get over there. We got like 15 minutes to get across the lower basin. And he goes, you better get on your trolling motor. And Kent, I'm on my trolling motor, leaving the pocket with tears in my eyes. I see all the boats going in across the lower basin. They didn't find me for an hour and a half. Evan Rude Johnson cost me an All-American and a brand new fully loaded Chevy S10 truck and a boat rig.
Well, look at all the money that you won with a Mercury, though. So
that's why. And then I went running back to Dan Shad. The next year, I was like, Dan, I take me back. And he goes, where did you go? Why did you leave us? And I go, that kid you hired, he asked me for a resume and I couldn't get it to him in time. And you know, they wanted my boat. Basscat wanted my boat. So you and I have been with Mercury. Well, Michelle, thank you. Loved it, Michelle, but we both Mercury.
We do love Michelle and all the way back to Kevin Lipke and Pam Binky.
Dan Shad. Yeah.
Dan actually put me in my first sponsor motor. And he told me, he said, man, he goes, we got more than enough guys in the West Coast running Mercuries. He said, I'll do something with you, but you're going to have to run a Mariner. And that was just a gray motor. It was absolutely fine. And
isn't that something? I remember that.
So I remember my first 4 or 5 boats I ran had Mariners on them.
So
Until Mariner went away and they slid me into Mercury at that point in time.
So fun fact, I learned this through being a boat rep as a young man and all that. Evinrude Johnson, Mercury Mariner, that allowed those companies to have a much bigger profit share. They could put a Mercury
Yeah,
dealer down the street from a Mariner dealer. They could put a
right,
Evinrude dealer down the street from a Johnson dealer, and that's how those big companies doubled up on their, because they'd give you 50 miles or a 100-mile radius, right? And now
right,
you're in the
right.
rep business, you know this, but back then that's how you double dipped. I'm surprised Yamaha didn't have a secondary name for their Yamahas, because Mercury
Right.
Mariner, Evinrude Johnson, they were like, you know what, we're going to be able to put dealers all over the place right alongside each other,
We'll
gray or
just make
black.
Fred a Mariner dealer, down the road,
Yes.
and that's how it worked.
Fun
And yeah,
fact.
my real job, today is the Western Regional Sales Manager for White River Marine. I have California, Oregon, and Washington for all of our brands, all the Bass Pro Shop branded boats. So, I'm in such a cool position because I get to do Ranger, I get to do Nitro, I get to do Triton, I get to do,
Wow.
the trackers, I get to do everything, and then still really kind of get deeper into the boat business beyond the bass boat business that we all grew up and loved. With pontoons and family runabouts and deep V aluminum and all that fun stuff. So it's super cool to kind of do that.
You remember a long time ago, I walked that walk, right? Like, remember I was a boat rep back
Oh
in the
yeah,
day? I think it
yeah.
was Bass Cat started me, and after Bass Cat, it was Viper, and then that was it, and then I know you went to Triton with Earl and that, and it's like
I was with
we
Earl and Triton, and
we've walked down that line together before, and it's cool that you're doing that, and you got to love it. You're perfect for the job of repping. Like, you got to love
well,
all that.
it's fun to do it, and it's fun to go to the tournaments now, and even not fishing them doesn't kill me like it used to. I mean, I know you did it when you were, a younger boat rep too, and we were so ate up with wanting to compete that when you had to go work a tournament and not fish in a tournament, it killed you.
Yeah.
You were like, wait, man, dude, I don't want to do that. I don't want to. I want to fish. When they fire that outboard up in the morning, it's like a drug, and I want to be in it. I don't want to be standing on the dock.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
we went way off track, but I know you were going to be talking about Gary a little bit more because you were going to finish your
Oh,
Gary story, and I
I mean, he
sidetracked the heck
he
out of you.
is, and the cool part with Gary was he kind of he made me just growing up, all I wanted to do was flip. That was what you did, especially living out west. We had so much opportunity, and then really becoming a very dear friend to D. Thomas's. And Gary and I were. I remember we were having dinner with him late in D's life, and the waitress walked up, and it was a restaurant he was very well known in, and ate out a lot. And the waitress walked up, and Gary and I were at the table with him, and she said, "Are these your boys? Are these your sons? Yeah, are these your sons?" And he goes,
Oh,
"Yes, they are."
oh,
And that's
that's so
where he
cool.
left it.
Yeah.
That's where he left it. And so Gary and I still have a lot of talks about D, and we still reminisce about D, and all the cool stuff that we got to do with him that maybe a lot of guys didn't get to do. If you notice in the first part of the interview, Byron, those rods that are above my head that are in my game room, I have my mom's Fenwick rod that she always fished with, no matter where we went. My dad's Fenwick rod. My very first Fenwick baitcaster I bought when I was 15 is the rod that's, on the bottom of that display. So I still have that with a Ryobi 85,000 I bought a few years ago online to put on the display rod, right? The top rod is a one-piece Fenwick Finglass D. Thomas flipping stick, and
Wow.
it's got a 4600 CB ambassador on it. And just this last weekend, a guy calls me over in the bleachers at the ISE show, and he said, "Hey, I have something for you. I grew up down in Livermore, whatever Bay Area kind of was. Livermore, I think he was in. But he said, I grew up with D and D's stepson David, and he used to take us fishing all the time. And, I fished with him all the time and was always around the family. And he said, I was digging through a tackle box and I found this, and it was one of D's jigs. And it was one of the black, bucktail, hand tied D. Thomas flipping jigs that D made. And I've had the rod and I've had the reel for a long time, Byron. I probably had it for a year or better put together, but I didn't have anything tied on it. And I was always going, man, what am I going to tie on these rods? Not this, that rod on display needed something tied on it.
Yes.
And just out of nowhere, somewhere D hooked me up with this guy and said, here's a D Thomas flipping jig. Like, go tie that on that flip stick.
I was editing your show and I was looking at the rods hanging with all the lures.
Yeah.
I was, because I do all the editing, or I do some of the editing. I also have
Yeah.
a dear friend that's helping me with this. But when I'm editing all day today during the Broncos Patriots game that I told you I've been up since like 6 o'clock, iced in over here at the house with my daughter. Yeah, we're iced in. We haven't left the house all day, Camber and I. But I was editing and I was looking at those rods and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's really cool that he has a bunch of rods hanging there with lures and stuff hanging from them.
Yeah.
It's really,
and those lures are from my parents' tackle boxes and my tackle boxes. I've got a bunch of autographed baits, from friends,
Dude,
from everybody. So it's kind of cool.
You helped me pull one of the greatest pranks on D. Thomas, and I got to thank you for that. I got to tell the listeners about this. And we talked about pro draws. If anybody watching the show hasn't seen Bobby Barrick talk about the worst pro draw ever on the Delta, you need to watch that, because he talks about getting totally poached by a 10-pounder. Best story we have as far as cool segments with
at least it was on video, Bobby. Yeah. Geez, at least we all get to visit that every once in a while.
Yeah, but you came up to me because I drew D. Thomas one day, and you said, hey, before you go talk to him, because you walk up to the piece of paper at Bassmaster and you look at your name and you look and you see your drawings for the next day. And I go, and I'm standing next to you and I go, oh my gosh, we're at the Delta and I just do D. Thomas. He goes, and Kent's like, do me a favor. He goes, when you walk up, tell him, flip a coin. You say, well, I want to take my boat and flip a coin and just see what he does.
Yeah. You got a quarter? You got a quarter, D?
You get D. Thomas on the California Delta, the king of flipping, and you walk up as a kid. And I walked up with a straight face. Kent, you'll love it. And I go, hey, D. And he goes, are we fishing together? And I go, yes, sir, I drew you for tomorrow. And he goes, okay, well, and he starts talking about his boat. He goes, wait, before we talk about anything, he goes, we got to flip to see whose boat we're taking. And you can, and it was like, he goes, excuse me? And I go, well, we got to flip a coin on. Don't we have to flip a coin first? Protocol is to see if we're going to take my boat or your boat, and then we'll flip to see what area we're going to. I go, but I know you know the Delta really well, so I just want to fish out of my boat on your spots. And he starts doing this, and he's looking at me, and I go, don't worry, I know how to run the Delta. You just point where I need to go if I win the flip. Oh, Kent, you set me up so well, because it was he started shaking, and I go, Kent Brown told me to tell you that, but anyway, D, it's an honor to draw you. Just tell me where to go, what to bring, and what do you want for lunch? Because I'm just excited to be in a boat with you, man.
He was so competitive. We were at a Bassmaster tournament at the Delta, and we were at Russo's, so they had the top 10. They had us all pulled up final day tied to the dock. And I was in 10th. D was in about 4th or 5th. And I told my co-angler to hold my boat. We were getting ready to go in the morning. I said, hold my boat. I hopped out of my boat. I ran down the dock and I hopped on the back deck of D's boat and I threw my arms around him. And I said, don't slip up, old man. I'm right behind you. And I jumped out of his boat and he started screaming, bring it on, boy. Bring it on. Bring it on, boy. And we got out to the pole at Russo's where you put it up on plane and leave. And my co-angler said, D. Thomas just flipped you the bird and gave me a thumbs up. And I said, yeah, he was communicating to me over what I told him on the dock.
Gary Klein talked about this. He said he was so competitive that if he knew where you were fishing, and Gary was like a son to D. So again, if you watch the podcast with Gary Klein on Fish Tales, Gary was like D's son. But if Gary was doing well and D knew where he was, he sent his flotilla in to fish to help you catch your fish.
We called it the Red Navy because it was all guys who bought old boats of D's.
Oh, so, I didn't know that.
You get out there and find out he sent the Red Navy to your spot. You're in trouble.
So I never told you this. I never told you the story, Kent, but he's making his milk run. He's catching them, and he's putting a pretty good clinic on against me. Pro draw, but I'm sitting there, and I'm not going to crowd the guy at the front of the boat, so I stay in the back of the boat. I could have been up front with him, but I'm like, man, this is D. Thomas on the Delta. I'm happy to draw him, but I'm still trying to hold my own. I'm trying to hold my own. Never forget it. We're out in Sherman Lake, which is way out west in the Delta, and he has all these hyacinth mats that he's fishing, and the wind's blowing, and he's going along, and he's backseating me pretty good, but the wind's he's coming up to this configuration that he can't very well backseat me, and I make a perfect little pitch, and I flip it in there, thunk, and I pull one about 5.5 or 6, and D just tightens up and he goes, too many targets, too many targets. You hear him talking to himself. He goes, he starts shaking and he just, like Rain Man, he talks to himself and he goes, too many targets, too many targets. Cause I caught a 6. He's not saying, good job, boy. Nice fish. Cause I get that fish, I put it in the well and I'm happy. I sit back up there. He doesn't say a word to me except too many targets, too many targets. I got to backseat this kid.
He was so competitive, and you know, 2 real quick D. Thomas stories, and we'll go on, Byron. But in 2020, I was inducted into the California Outdoor Hall of Fame, and there's 3 bass fishermen in the California Outdoor Hall of Fame that they've ever put in, and D was the first one, obviously. Myself and Skeet Reese, and I was the last of the 3 put in. Well, after they put me in, D was still alive, and he called me after I'd gotten the announcement had come out that I'd gotten inducted. He calls me up and he said, hey, boy, heard you got in that Hall of Fame. I said, yeah. He said, well, congratulations. You deserve it. He said, you know, they started with me. Now they got you and Reese. They must be going down the list.
Oh, that's so D. Thomas. That's
right?
So D. Thomas. Yeah, rest in peace, D. We love you so much.
We do. And for your listeners who were never fortunate enough to hear the laugh, okay? If you search on YouTube, and the show was called True Bass. Remember Galaxy Marine up here in Auburn? They put it out, but the show was called True Bass. And there's a 3-part show that I shot with D. Thomas on the California Delta. And it was just D and I in the boat. And that's my most precious D. Thomas memory and memorabilia from you know, the father of flipping, because I actually have that 30-minute TV show of him and I on the Delta fishing together. So it's super cool.
That is super cool. Yeah, he was a legend, and I'll have to put a link, not a link. I'll put a link in the description, but I'll also put, again, the cool thing here is I post production. You're making more work for me, but I'm going to look it up, find it, and then type it in right here. And so I got nothing else to do. We're snowed in or iced in, and I just see I'm surprised we still have power.
You got to watch the whole show. I promise you. You know, as soon as you hear Dee's voice again, and
I can't even do it. Can you do it?
I know. No, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And it was just so fun, you know, to get to do that with him. So you'll see it, and you know, I really do. I hope the podcasters can get a chance to, you know, to just, gosh, you're snowed in, man. You got 30 minutes. This is a legend you get to watch fishing. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about D. Thomas. It is a legend you get to watch.
The father of flipping, everybody. The father of flipping. It all started with him.
He invented it. Denny Brower didn't invent it. Hank Parker didn't invent it.
Gary Klein emulated it.
Didn't invent it.
Nope, not Tommy Biffle, nobody. Dave Glebe learned it quick and took it back east and wiped everybody off the face of the tournament world with it. Yeah, and there's another segment I'm going to get into, but eventually we got to get Dave Glebe on the show,
he's working at Bass Pro in Manteca, California. He works in the reel counter.
This is the legend, Dave Glebe. Dave Glebe. We were at the U.S. Open a couple of years ago. He's walking through the sponsor line, and people are talking to me and wanting some autographs and taking pictures. All of a sudden, I stop everything. I go, Dave Glebe. And all these kids are looking at me like, who's the old man Byron's hugging, you know? I'm like, this is the legend. This is Dave Glebe, superstar. I used to have magazines that was Dave Glebe, superstar, Larry Nixon, Rick Clunn, you name it, Biffle, everybody, they all have stories of Glebe back east.
Ads when they had Skeeter down the leg of their pants. Was
Evil Knievel, the Evil Knievel looking stuff. They look like Evil Knievel. Yeah. Dave Glebe looked like big collars and Evil Knievel looking outfits and all that. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I heard a story. You told me that these kids at Bass Pro Shop say there's a guy that works in the reel department that can cast like a machine.
Yeah, he's pretty good at pitching. I'm like, you guys don't know who he is, do you?
He's a legend.
It's hilarious that, you know, he's over there talking to these kids about, you know, going to the Delta and what have you. And they're kind of like, yeah. Yeah, he's the real counter guy at Bass Pro Shop.
Real counter guy at Bass Pro Shop is the
Yeah.
most winningest guy back east in the day that literally blindsided all of the tour pros. Anybody you've ever known: Hank Parker, Bill Dance, Jimmy Houston, Larry Nixon.
Taught Roland Martin how to flip.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah, smoked them all. So taught Roland Martin how to flip, and now he's in Manteca, and he's just, it's, I gotta try to get him on the show. Kent Duke said it's very hard to get him on the show. It'd be very interesting. And that's where I wish D. Thomas was still alive. D would be great to have on this show, just to tell these stories. But we're doing it in memory of D. And before we leave, because I know we've already got Spicy 2 shows together. The segment you already did was, the one that got away, right? But I never even told you I was going to ask you this one. Kent Brown, the worst pro draw you ever had.
The worst pro draw I ever had. Byron, I don't remember the kid's name. Okay.
Probably a good thing. Probably a good thing.
But I drew him at Lake Shasta, day 2 of one of our pro-am events, right? And we were fishing, and I had sucked day 1, right? So I'm going through the motions on day 2. And this kid was just negative from the moment he got in the boat. He was just negative. And, fishing sucks and this and that. Oh, this is terrible. And, oh my God, I wanted to get a good pro. I never draw any of the good guys.
I got you.
Deal.
I don't get anything is. I got you, Kent Brown. Ouch.
And I finally told, he said, is my negative getting to you? And I literally turned around to him. I'll never forget. And I said, no, not at all. I said, you'll know when your negative got to me, because you'll be standing on the dock at Bridge Bay holding your rods in one hand, your tackle box in another, watching my taillights go up over that hill. And he went, oh. I'm like, so however you want this day to unfold. And we had an okay day past that, but I couldn't tell you his name, but it was a pretty rugged draw.
Yep.
Pretty rugged draw. And then I drew our old buddy Howard Hughes. I drew our old buddy Howard Hughes at the very first one bass tournament that Fred Borders won at Clear Lake.
Yeah.
And I drew Howard on day 2, and I brought a co-angler and Howard didn't. So I wasn't about to flip a coin. And Harvey Naslow's like, you guys figure it out. I'm like, no, nothing to figure out. I flipped a coin. I'm not flipping a coin. I brought a co-angler. I'm guaranteed to use my boat. I'm taking my boat. And I'm flipping. And that was when we were running the hand-off trolling motors with the Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, stand on one leg, run the Bigfoot trolling motor, and I'm flipping. And I caught him really good that day. And Howard drugged me around to a couple of his spots, and I got frustrated. And he wanted to go crank a ledge. And I'm sitting literally on my outboard motor throwing a crankbait over my shoulder. And I catch about a 5-pounder off a Howard spot, and he throws the rods down, and he said, just go do what you want to do.
That was
I'm
it.
done.
That was it.
Oh, we were done. Yeah, we were done. And we were great friends to this day, right? Another D. Thomas story. We get back there, and D. Thomas goes, boy, that boy can flip a long ways, can't he, Howard? And Howard just looked at D, and he goes, I couldn't run that trolling motor. D goes, well, you should have had him pull that regular trolling motor up that he's got in the rod locker and put it on the bow of the boat.
Oh.
And Howard just looked at me and he goes, you have a regular trolling motor in this boat? And I'm like, well, yeah, it's in the rod locker. It's where it's supposed to be,
Yep.
But yeah, I had a foot-off trolling motor in the rod locker. I was in the old days of boat, So I kept my Bigfoot hand-off trolling motor on the bow, but I did have a regular trolling motor in the rod locker. Howard's never let me forget that.
I told somebody the other day about that. I said, back in the tour days, we used to carry spare trolling motors in our boats. It was just one of those things where if you were 40, 50, 60 miles away, and I knew that, I drew Rick Klein in the U.S. Open when I was in college. I know I talk about that a lot on the Fishtails podcast, but we were all the way up towards the Grand Canyon. He's making 1 million casts a minute. I'm trying to keep up with him as a college kid, and all of a sudden he puts his foot down, and there's no power, and he keeps touching it, and there's no power, and he fiddles with it for like 30 seconds, and then I see him like a ninja. He drops down on his knees. He goes, zip, 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 zip. He pulls it, opens his rod locker, throws the other one, zip, 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 stands up, and starts fishing again. And I go, that dude just changed his trolling motor in about 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yeah.
and
They're a
it was
lot harder to change today than they were then.
you can't do it. But back then, they
Oh,
just pulled the bracket, stuck it on there, flipped it, and they were gone again. It's like you didn't have transducers
yeah.
and power cables and all that. But it was the most impressive thing that Rick Clunn literally didn't get flustered, didn't say a word, didn't get upset, didn't do anything, didn't break out any tools, just reached down. He had the hand control. You could do that with the hand control. But I go, you carry a spare trolley. I was in college. He goes, if you're going to start doing this for a living, you better have a spare trolley in your rod locker at all times.
I'm still trying to pay off the last trolling motor I got on my boat. You know,
Yes.
I don't need a spare. I
Yeah.
haven't paid for the one I got now.
Nowadays, you can't afford to have a spare. That's a mortgage payment on your house.
Yeah, and you need a NASCAR crew to put it on the bow for you too. You know, there's a lot more to the trolling motor today on the modern bass boat than there was when we were doing, you know, a pin and two screws.
Oh, it's such
You know.
great memories, man. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Because I know I'm dragging you into a long, like hour plus long show now. Because this one is this crazy. Like we went 25 minutes the first time, which I edited down to like 22 with all of the I can't hear you,
Yeah.
Kent. Can you hear me, Byron? I can't hear you, Kent.
God forbid you give us a good connection.
Yeah, well, you got a great connection now, but is there anything else you want to chit chat about before I say we're gonna do this again?
You know, the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame is growing and really does a cool deal, and they have such a great home in the wonders of wildlife. Someday, I want to see my dear friend Bobby Garland in the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame because I think he deserves it.
Yep.
You know, he invented the Gets It and the spider jig and the mini jig and finesse fishing, and you know, I mean, all that stuff that Bobby did, and you grew up around Bobby, you knew what you knew what he was all about. And honestly, Byron, the other one is you know, John Murray. And unfortunately, I think John's career is overshadowed because they couldn't see the West Coast from where they were standing. And we all know what Johnny did, you know, in the West, and it was such a dominant force. And what a real key player he was. I mean, I remember we knew we were going to get our butts kicked, but I knew we were also excited when we saw the black van and the red boat roll into the parking lot in the morning and John was in town.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And
know?
you're the second guest, Kent. Jay Kumar is really, really pushing hard for John Murray. I didn't know Bobby Garland was not in the Hall of Fame. That's
He is
shocking to
not
me.
he's in none of them. He's not in the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame.
Bobby
He's
Garland,
not in the Bass Fishing
Garland,
Hall of
the
Fame.
Garland that gets it. Oh my
The
gosh,
Gets
that's
It.
crazy.
The Gets It. You know, and
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I grew up in the West Coast, guys. It's not a tube jig. It's a
not
Gets
a
It.
2J. That's so true. Oh my gosh, that's right. The Gets It. It's not
the
called a
Gets It.
2J. Right, right.
And if you really want to know, it's called a fat Gets It. That's what Bobby named it.
Right.
You know.
Oh yeah,
And,
and John Murray, I'm with you on that. You're the second guest on the show to out of the blue because he brought it up on his own, unsolicited, and said John Murray to be in the Hall of Fame. It would be so well deserved and so appreciated by John. I don't know if anybody ever watches Fish Tales that has any influence with the Hall of Fame, but I agree with you 100%. And at least we're letting the audience know. John was on our show again. Gary Klein, John Murray, Rick Clunn, Kent Brown. You know, we're Skeet.
we even let Skeet do it.
I let Skeet do this show. I had to get Skeet on the show. Oh man, we've had so many great guests, and of course, I know you laughed about the fact you were wedged in between everybody and Hank. I'm still trying to get you back on the phone. So Hank Parker, we talked last week about doing the show, and he was going to go off fishing, and he has his new podcast coming up in a different studio. So Hank, I'm still working on you. I'm going to send you this show, and I'm going to get you on here because I have
one of my dearest friends, man. One of my dearest friends in the industry is Hank Parker. He's just, I love that guy. He's such a good man.
He's a great guy.
Such a good man.
Him and I shared man sponsorship together. We actually, as a kid, I roomed with him at the, you remember the old Staybridge Suites, you know, the ones that look like condominiums? They have those really, or Residence Inn, I'm sorry, Residence Inn. You know, I was just this kid, you know, this man's kid, but I was sleeping up in the loft because he had the big room downstairs to himself. But I was in awe of the fact that I got to room for a whole show, the Bassmaster Spring Festival at Springfield, Missouri. So man sent us there, and Frank Ulrich put us both in the hotel together. He goes, "Oh, you guys stay at that Residence Inn." I'm like, I am rooming with Hank Parker, like just pinch me, and following him around the show. It's surreal when you're a kid and you're rooming with him for the show, like no big deal. And so it's we've had so many great memories. You and I have had so many fortunate, and those days will never be like that now. It's totally different now. It's unfortunate.
It's really not. My parents paid for me to go to a Bassmaster tournament, and I went back with Klein. I was 21. I went to Okeechobee and flew down and practiced with Gary. The last day of practice, Gary walks in we were staying in these little ratty hotels down there in Clewiston, and he said, "Hey, get your stuff out of my boat." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Get your stuff out of my boat, man." He goes, I'm gonna go by myself today." I'm like, "Okay," so all right. I go get my stuff out of the boat, the rods, my tackle boxes and stuff. About 2 minutes after I get my stuff out of the boat, he starts laughing because Rick Klein pulls into the parking lot, and he said, "Oh, by the way, you're going with Ricky today." And
Oh,
I'm
wow.
21 years old, dude, and he just put me
Oh,
in the black and red skeeter with Rick Klein,
right? Oh my
right?
gosh. And you go from Gary Klein to Rick Klein back east, and
Right,
like me, 20 years old with Hank Parker, 22, and you're
right,
like,
yeah.
How did I get this lucky?"
Yeah, I mean, and I remember I went down, I put my hand down in the water to get a fade out, right? And I think Rick was messing with me a little bit, but he goes, "Hey, you're from California. Don't do that out here in Florida. They'll things that come out of the water and bite you."
Oh
Okay,
my
you know.
gosh.
And
Wow.
we used to flip spinnerbaits in the Delta just to cover water. We'd flip them, just keep them moving, right?
Right.
And I did that in the Tules in Florida, and I caught like a 4 or 5 pounder behind Rick, and he goes, "I never seen anybody do that." And I thought he was just kind of being nice. But to this day, when I see Rick, he always goes, "Still flipping them spinnerbait?" And
That's
we get to do a
cool.
lot of stuff now with Bass Pro and Nitro. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
so to this day, Ricky's always like, yeah, he's
Still
still
flipping
flipping that
those
spinnerbait.
spinnerbaits.
Yeah. And I had him autograph an RC3 for me to put up in my, in the rack, in the walls. So it was cool.
Hey, hey, hey! I wanted that leads me into it. I'm going back into Byron's bunker. The eBay stuff, and Rick
Yeah.
gave me a bunch of those autographed RC3s to put on Byron's bunker on eBay.
Oh,
And
man.
you let me.
Everybody who's a fan of bass fishing needs to buy that.
Yeah, I have them. I have them, and Rick gave me a box of them. He signed a bunch of the pose baits, and he
Yeah.
signed them. So, shameless plug here, but anybody looking for cheap tackle starting this week and next week, well, especially while I'm locked in, go to Byron's Bunker on eBay. It's just Byron's Bunker. I know you let me promote it. You let me promote it on your radio show,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's the season now where I'm like, I got all that fishing tackle, and I just put up there for like 99 cents or $1 or $2. Like you turned me on to the Cincos. I didn't know that
Yeah.
Cincos had the old Cincos with the old packaging are worth a lot of money now, and I got a ton of that stuff. So it's
Yeah.
like you are helping me understand what the heck to sell. What frog was that I sold that went for like
Oh,
$150?
wasn't that like it was like a popping frog?
Poppin' frog.
It was a
Snag.
snag proof that these guys are losing their mind over,
Dude,
you
I
know?
found it, and I called you and I said I found these snag-proof frogs, and I looked it up on eBay, and I saw a used one sell for like $60 or $70. And I'm like,
Yeah,
60 or $70 for a used, and I got a brand new one, sexy shad color, snag-proof frog. And I called Bobby.
yeah,
He goes, I don't have any of those. He goes, everybody's asked me for them. He goes, I think they're getting like $100 for them. It went for like $150 or $165 on Byron's Bunker.
right. And I know one of these days, Byron, that Andre Moore is probably going to open up a box car full of old Vixens and just lay us all away on those things because those guys, they'll pay any price you want for an old Vixen.
Oh my
The
gosh.
original Reaction Innovations Vixen. So
Yeah, so
yeah,
I got to get Byron's Bunker going again because and if anybody just goes on eBay, they can start following me. But from January to June, that's the time for me to sell stuff. And I'm probably going to come on your radio show if you don't mind and promote my
anytime,
eBay site because I got to get rid of all this fishing tackle. There's no better place to do it than on eBay.
anytime, man. And buddy, you're one of my dear friends, and we got a lot of miles under us. We can't tell stories about
No,
we can't tell stories about Club Rio. You know,
no, we
can I,
can't tell
can I
stories.
tell
I know where you're going
can I
with that.
tell a quick Byron Velvick story?
It depends. I get to edit it out. That's the best part. So if I don't like it, if I don't like it, nobody at Fishtails is going to see it. So it depends. My daughter watches this show. Okay.
Fishing. Oh, Canberra will appreciate this.
Okay.
Actually,
Okay.
we're fishing a big bass tournament at the Delta. It's one fish, 50 grand, right? And we're fishing it. We're doing some seminars. We're doing all this cool stuff, and we all go out in Stockton that night, and we're hanging out. Byron's single, and he meets this girl. Now, when we used to go to a bar with Byron pre-bachelor days, it was like the one really hot girl and her three ugly friends is what that was the group of us that went out. So you were like, oh yeah, they're all going to be jumping on Byron.
That's not
So
true.
we go to the bar, and Byron's making pretty good conversation with this little brunette girl, and we want to go. We got to fish in the morning. And Byron's telling her, "Well, I got to work at 4 o'clock in the morning. I got to work at 4 o'clock in the morning." And finally, he goes to the restroom, and the girl goes, "What does your friend do for work that he has to go to work at 4 o'clock in the morning?" And I'm like, "Well,
I'm embarrassed.
he's kind of embarrassed about it, but his mom told him he had to get a job. So actually, he delivers papers, and Sunday's the big day. He doesn't ride a bike. He throws them out of the bed of a Datsun pickup." And she got her coat.
This is a true
She got her
story.
coat. She got her coat and her purse and was like, "Bye," out the door. Byron's like, "What happened? Like, can we go now? Can we go back to the room and all of us can go to bed, go fishing in the morning?" And it wasn't, I think, until the next day we told her you had a paper route.
You told her
And,
I was a paper boy living at home with my mom, at home with my mom with a Datsun pickup truck throwing papers out. So basically, that girl, when I got back, you would have thought I was a leper. You thought I had leprosy. You couldn't have said anything.
Go.
You couldn't say anything worse about me. No, I had a paper out. My second favorite story is you used to give me credit because I was the guy sight fishing when you said nobody knew what he was doing because I had my hands in the pocket going around the lake with my hands in my pocket. And you go, "And Byron, what are you doing? Looking for your car keys or looking for a rod and reel in the water?" Because I was looking at bedfish. Remember those days? And you're like,
"Oh, yeah. Did you lose your keys, Byron?"
Yeah.
You know?
I was the guy driving around and there were tournaments going on and I was just looking at all these bedfish and I'm like, and I told you, we laughed about it because they're like, Byron and Murray said that. He goes, "Don't tell anybody what's going on in the springtime because out here it was an untouched fishery." So did you lose your keys? Did you lose your rod? So between giving out papers, throwing out papers and then driving around looking for my keys in the water, that was about.
I was always there to help you, B. I was always there to help you, buddy.
Dude, I love you, man. I love you. And thanks for getting in your car. Thanks for getting in your car and driving to a great cell signal so we can knock this out. Though, and I appreciate your patience with making this show happen,
buddy. I so appreciate getting to come on. I still don't know how I got wedged in between the greatest anglers in the world, but I do appreciate it, and always fun, man, when I get to hang out with you.
Thanks, buddy. We'll talk later. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks, BB.
Bye, Kent.
Fish Tales has been brought to you by Livingston Lures. Learn more at livingstonlures.com. Fish Tales is also supported by these fine sponsors: Trika Fishing, Mercury Outboards, and Canis Boats.